If you ever have sleep issues, melatonin can be a great way to go. Melatonin is clinically proven to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. My favorite way to take it is before bed with a nice warm mug of Dream Hot Cocoa with melatonin from our sponsor Beam, naturally sweetened with monk fruit, only 15 calories in a ton of delicious flavors. Every serving has 1 dose of melatonin to help you fall asleep fast and sleep the entire night. Go to shopbeam.com/David and use code David for up to 40% off. The link is in the description. Welcome to the show. Lest anybody think that the election hasn't yet started, not only has the election started with early voting, we're already seeing turnout records. Who this is good for, sort of depends on your interpretation, and we're going to dig into that. But here is what we know. In Georgia, the first day of early voting set all-time records, suggesting that stories of a lack of enthusiasm have certainly been overstated. The question is there enthusiasm for one or both candidates? And we're going to deal with that in a second. The Georgia Recorder reports the first day of early voting, Tuesday, has already set a new record for the first day of advanced voting, according to the Secretary of State. By the end of the day, 305,000 votes were cast in person. The previous first day early voting record was 136,000. So about 2.5 times the number of early votes on that first day compared to 2020, which was the previous single day record. Georgia, as the article points out, is one of the 7 swing or battleground states and has 3 weeks of early voting. Brad Raffensperger, who's the Secretary of State, recommends having a plan to vote, saying, quote, if you want to vote absentee, make that decision today, get your request in. If you're going to vote early, take a look at your calendar, decide when. If you're going to vote on election day, decide what time. Okay, so this is extraordinarily interesting news because there were stories of lack of enthusiasm. Republicans aren't really enthusiastic about scrumps this time around. Or Democrats, yes, they don't like Trump, but they're not super excited about Kamala Harris. These are the stories that have been told. Now, of course, you watch a Trump rally, you see people leaving, you see people yawning, you see people sleeping. It would be reasonable to say it doesn't strike me that these people are super excited. On the other hand, you see Kamala Harris rallies and you look at them and you probably say this seems like there's quite a bit of excitement here. But the question here is, given the early voting record, are both sides excited or only one? One story is the one I just told you. I think it's a reasonable story. I think it's a beautiful story. I think it's a plausible story, which is that there does not seem to be a lot of enthusiasm for Trump. Biden won Georgia in 2020. Georgians, especially Democratic Georgians, know Georgia could be the deciding state in who becomes president of the United States, and Harris voters are activated. They're excited. They are titillated, and they are going out to vote. Now, there's a counterpoint to this. And I got another email yesterday, David, I'm unsubscribing because what we need now is unabashed optimism only. You will be responsible if Harris loses because you're not as optimistic. Give me a break, guys. I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break. I'm telling it the way I see it. And I think it's important to consider when we look at these early voting numbers in Georgia that Trumpists also know that Georgia was a key state in 2020. In 2020, Donald Trump and the MAGA apparatus at large were saying early voting is fraudulent. Mail-in voting is fraudulent. Don't do it. Vote on election day. Whereas this time around, Trump, while still saying all of these new ways to vote are subject to fraud, vote however you can. MAGA people have been saying, vote however you can. So we shouldn't ignore the fact that the reason we're getting record turnout on day one of early voting in Georgia could be because on the Democratic side, Harris voters know Georgia was a critical state in 2020, and it's good to get out and vote. But at the same time, in 2020, MAGA was telling people, don't vote early. Only on election day is your vote secure. Whereas in 2024, Trump and MAGA have been saying, vote however you can. And so both of those, Harris voters and Trump voters, may be voting in record numbers. And that's why we're seeing these records in Georgia. If you look at the polling, and I know people are furious about polling, David, don't look at it. In a multi-candidate Georgia poll, it's basically a tie. Trump is winning by 0.6. For people who say, oh, it's only because of Rasmussen, it's not. Trump is winning the Quinnipiac poll, considered a good poll. Trump is winning Bloomberg. Trump is winning Fox News. I know people say, Fox News, what are you talking about? Fox News polling is not Fox News editorial television. It's actually quite respectable. And if you go over to the 538 average, which some of you like better, it also has Donald Trump winning Georgia by 1.1. So I am optimistic about the meaning of this early voting record turnout. And I'm also realistic when I look at the data and when I look at the stories. Regardless, it seems early voting is bigger than ever in general. And why not? Get it out of the way early. You never know. Could be bad weather on election day, but weather's good today. Go and vote today and cross it off the list. You know, well, we've talked many times now about how every accusation from MAGA is a confession. It's something we call projection. That which you accuse your opponent of, you are actually guilty of yourself. And today we're going to talk about, all capital letters, election interference. Election interference is something Donald Trump and those around him have been talking about for a very long time. They like to say that Trump being investigated is election interference. They like to say that Trump being charged is election interference. They like to say that Kamala Harris being interviewed is election interference. Everything is election interference. And it's not. But we now have found some election interference. Donald Trump is apparently colluding with Elon Musk's Twitter, now known as X. And if you're looking for the real election interference, you don't need to look under a rock. You don't need to look in Joe Biden's garage, or garage, as some like to say. You need to look at X. You need to look at Twitter. The New York Times reports Musk is going all in to elect Trump. Elon Musk is planting himself in Pennsylvania, has brought his brain trust to help, and may even knock on doors himself. This article goes on to delineate and expose what has been happening with Twitter. And it says, quote, the relationship, meaning the Trump-Musk relationship, has proved significant in other ways. After a reporter's publication of hacked Trump campaign information last month, the campaign connected with X to prevent the circulation of links to the material on the platform, according to two people with knowledge of the events. X eventually blocked links to the material and suspended the reporter's account. I want to speak as clearly as I can. On the show, I make an effort to communicate clearly, and sometimes I fail and people write to me and they've completely misunderstood what I've said. Let me really, in simple terms, clarify what's going on here. MAGA and Trump have been arguing for 4 years that Twitter, quote, censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story, which was, of course, obtained with surreptitiously acquired information from Hunter Biden's laptop, if you even believe that that's what it was, right? But let's give them that that's what it was. Information leaked, obtained, stolen, whatever term you want to use, from Hunter Biden's supposed laptop. The Biden campaign, not at the time the government, because Trump was president, the Biden campaign reached out and said, hey, Twitter, this story violates your own terms of service. There are pictures here, explicit pictures without consent of Hunter Biden's, and that is against your terms of service. The story should be suppressed. That is supposedly election interference. It is a violation of someone's First Amendment right. They never say who. It's a censorship, so on and so forth. You now have the Trump campaign, equivalent to the Biden campaign in 2020, reaching out to Twitter and saying, here is information that was obtained through subterfuge or leaks, right? Equivalent to the Hunter Biden story. Please block it. Please block it. This is exactly what they have been critical of Twitter for doing with the Hunter Biden laptop story. They've become convinced that if people were able to see Hunter Biden's, they would have voted for Trump instead of Biden. And now they're asking Twitter to do the same. And Twitter is doing it. And Twitter is doing it despite the fact that Elon Musk has said the, quote, censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story was bad. It was wrong. It shouldn't have been done. Now, if you sit them down, they will come up with differences, or they will come up with distinctions that aren't really differences. They will say, well, the Hunter Biden laptop story was real and newsworthy. Whether these leaks about J.D. Vance's communications or whatever's in there, these are not newsworthy. Well, who are you to decide? Isn't the spirit of free speech that we let the people decide? They will say, well, this is violating journalistic standards. Actually, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side of the discussion you're on, journalists and outlets publishing materials that were obtained surreptitiously has been going on for a very long time. And that in and of itself has not actually been the problem. Of course, this is a classic. If you like the materials, you focus on the materials and not how they became public. If you don't like the materials, you ignore the subject matter of the materials and instead focus only on these never should have been released, it never should have become public, etc. What we know are two things. If what Twitter did with the Hunter Biden laptop story was election interference, which they claim it was, what is happening right now is also election interference in their favor. And number two, nearly overnight, with the purchase of Twitter, now X, by Elon Musk, it became an overtly right-wing propaganda machine and a fertile breeding ground for conspiracy theories, misinformation. And if you've spent, I spend 5 minutes a week on Twitter. I'll kind of look at my mentions. It's funny, I'm never on there. There are still people tweeting horrible things at me. David, you're son of a this, And that's really all it's good for at this point. And yet they are still engaging in what, when it was 2020 and when it related to Hunter Biden, was allegedly newsworthy, quote, censorship of materials. We found the election interference and it's coming from their side. If you've ever struggled with sleep, melatonin can be a good option. No crazy side effects like the prescription drugs, and proven to work. And the most relaxing way to enjoy melatonin before bed is a nice mug of Dream Hot Cocoa by our sponsor, Beam. Dream is a flavorful hot cocoa with a dose of melatonin designed to ease you into restful sleep. Comes in flavors like mint chocolate chip, chocolate peanut butter, sea salt caramel. Dream has no added sugar. It's naturally sweetened with monk fruit and only 15 calories per serving. I'm a big fan of Dream's cinnamon cocoa flavor. Warm, soothing, perfect way to wind down before bed. And as a relatively new parent, I can tell you I have a whole new appreciation for sleep, being up at many various hours of the night with my daughter. And Dream Hot Cocoa puts my sleep rhythm back on track, helps me fall asleep and stay asleep longer, as melatonin is clinically proven to do. My audience gets up to 40% off when you go to shopbeam.com/David and use code David at checkout. The link is in the description. Two great ways to help the show if you so choose. One is get a membership at joinpacman.com. You get extra audio-visual content, the daily bonus show, commercial-free audio and video streams of the show, and so much more. That's joinpacman.com. Second option, pre-order a copy of my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, which I just held up completely upside down and backwards. The Echo Machine, How Right-Wing Extremism Created a Post-Truth America. A history of how we got here, examples of where we want to go, and a game plan for how it might be done, whether Trump or Harris win in November. You can pre-order the book at davidpacman.com/echo, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, bookshop.org, really any local bookstore. You can call and ask them to order David Pakman's The Echo Machine from Beacon Press. They'll get it for you just as quickly as everybody else. And a bunch of free stuff, including a signed book plate, is available for every pre-order. Submit your purchase receipt at davidpakman.com/free book stuff. Free book stuff. Donald Trump was in Georgia yesterday, and something that happened on stage, we have to cover this with tact and sensitivity. Something that happened on stage raised questions as to whether Donald Trump has had any medical events of the sort of cognitive kind over the last couple of months. Donald Trump spoke in Atlanta, Georgia, and at multiple points was barely intelligible, clearly deteriorating quickly. This wasn't even the worst thing that happened to Trump over the last few days. We'll get to that. But here is Trump. I can't even tell you what he's trying to say, but I can assure you it wasn't what he said.
He walked in with a couple of young constituents to show him the Capitol, as I remember it, and they accused him of showing in Russia's what? And he became, instead of most people, they say, oh, please, he became the opposite, indignant and wild, and he has done some job on the committee. Barry Loudermilk, we love you, Barry.
Completely lost. Completely lost. He doesn't know what he's saying. His brain seems to be almost just freezing, where you've got to hit Control-Alt-Delete or whatever people do on Apple computers. I don't know. Force quit. I don't know. I don't know what the right analogy is. And Neera Tanden tweeting about this, quote, seriously, do we know he hasn't experienced a medical event recently? This was not the only disturbing moment. Trump, at other moments during this event, barely coherent. The brain is just, it's just not clear what he's talking about here.
32 days, Mr. Congressman. 32, she's goes, and the election will be in 32 days. 32 days. The teleprompter crashed. 32 days. She kept going. I would have loved to, it kicked back in. It's called a kickback. Like some people know a lot about a kickback. It's called a kickback. They know in this administration, but no, it's a kickback. It kicks back in.
This is not a normal way of communicating. The signals are getting interrupted somehow, and because he won't release his medical record, and he's not actually subjecting himself to figuring out what is happening with this guy. Is he even remotely fit to be president? We don't know what's going on. Every single, it used to be every few months, he would say one thing wrong, Obama, or whatever, every few months. Then it became every month, and then it became every week, and then it became every other day. And it is now at every single appearance that he's doing. This isn't something to make fun of, right? I mean, he's not a kid, okay? He is at an age where while many people are fine cognitively, sometimes people aren't, and we have no visibility into what's going on. Every single day, multiple examples of Trump babbling like he doesn't even know where he is. And Republicans, I understand, pretending this isn't happening. I get it, okay? They see Harris as the absolute worst possible thing that could happen, Harris winning. So they're pretending that this isn't happening. But corporate media, with the occasional mention, with the exception of the occasional mention, also pretend that this isn't happening. Now, crowd members began to leave. You will see here as Donald Trump is speaking in the video that I'm playing, people are just heading for the exits, people getting up. And this was happening from about halfway through this thing, just on and on and on. And this is now happening at every single one of these Donald Trump rallies. So what is the explanation for what's happening? We don't know. Why are people leaving? We also don't really know. A few people contacted me yesterday and said next time Luke Beasley goes to a rally, he should stand outside while people leave and ask them why they're leaving. I spoke to Luke. He likes the idea. He's going to try to get to a rally between now and Election Day and interview the people leaving and say, why exactly are you leaving right now? We would like to know. When we talk about Donald Trump's worst interviews in history, there are many. There's the one with Axios's Jonathan Swan, where Trump completely fell apart. There's the one with the National Association of Black Journalists, where Trump said that Kamala became black but used to be Indian. There was that disaster. The many interviews when Trump said that he was sexually attracted to his own daughter, Ivanka. Those were pretty damn bad, I won't lie. But yesterday's interview at the Economic Club of Chicago might be the absolute worst, not just because of what Donald Trump says, but because of the proximity to the election just days away, and because this interview went so terribly that it has reportedly sent Donald's campaign into a total tailspin. Publicly, they are saying this was the greatest thing ever. Trump showed up and he showed those economists who really knows about tariffs, and he really showed them who's boss. But it was very bad. Trump was, sometimes we say Trump's unwilling to answer any questions. Trump seemed unable to answer any questions. In this clip, he's asked, should Google be broken up? It's a question of monopoly. It's a question of antitrust. And Trump talks about Virginia clearing up voter rolls. And then the interviewer actually says, I'm asking you about Google. What are you talking about, sir?
Should Google be broken up?
I just haven't gotten over something the Justice Department did yesterday, where Virginia cleaned up its voter rolls and got rid of thousands and thousands of bad votes, and the Justice Department sued them that they should be allowed to put those bad votes and illegal votes back in and let the people vote. So I haven't gotten over that. A lot of people have seen that. They can't even believe it.
The question is about Google, President Trump.
Trump spent months accusing Joe Biden of not being mentally fit for the presidency. And Joe Biden ultimately decided to step aside. He's being asked about Google, and he's talking about voter rolls. He can't keep it together. He can't do it. There was another point where Trump actually said it's important to be able to finish a point. And the interviewer says, you're swirling wildly. You're not finishing any points. And Trump calls it the weave. This is the new thing where Trump excuses his obvious cognitive limitations by saying he's weaving together different topics into a coherent narrative.
You got
to be able to finish a thought because it's very important. This is big stuff we're talking about. You can't go that quickly.
You've gone from the dollar to
So let
macro.
me just tell you. So I said, no, I'm just telling you basic, it's called the weave. It's all these different things happening.
Yeah.
So let me just...
The audience is laughing at Trump. They're not laughing with Trump because there's nothing funny. He's explaining away his incoherence by saying, because my uncle Donald John Trump, or whatever the guy's name, went to Wharton, we're geniuses in my family, and I can weave things together. It looks like he's doing Qigong when he does it. I weave things together, and it's my brilliance on display. My brilliance on display. At another point, Trump again says, it's the weave. And the interviewer, John Micklethwaite, says, the topic is tariffs, Mr. President.
And by the way, and I think it's very important, you can go, I call it the weave. You can call it, you have the weave as long as you end up in the right location at the end. But while we're talking about it, we have never been so close to World War III as we are right now. With what's going on in Ukraine and Russia and the Middle East.
Well, let's.
I had no wars in the whole world. Think of it. And I talked them out of wars. I talked plenty of countries out of wars. I had the whole world, other than ISIS, which I inherited, and I knocked out ISIS in a matter of weeks. It was supposed to take 4 to 5 years. I did it in a matter of weeks. We actually have a great military. We don't know how to use it, but we have a great military.
With great respect, I was asking about tariffs. You've gone off about that. Seeing you brought up tariffs and foreign policy, many people would say...
Should Google be broken up? Virginia did a terrible, terrible thing. I was asking about Google. Hey, how will your tariffs work? You know, World War III is going on. We're very close and we don't even know how to use the military. I was asking about tariffs. He can't do it. He just can't do it. There's no other way to say it. And by the way, Trump talking about how there were no wars when he was president, other than the Yemen civil war, the Syrian civil war, the Afghanistan war, the Libyan civil war, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which he said he would solve, the Nagorno-Karabakh war, the Turkish-Kurdish conflict, Trump bombing an airport and assassinating Soleimani. Other than that stuff and a few others that I'm not mentioning, there was no war when Donald Trump was president. Trump still very confused about how tariffs work. Didn't he see my viral clip from Vegas? Millions and millions of views explaining tariffs, and Trump still doesn't get them.
Come back to the Europeans in a second. What about consumers? People out there.
They're going to be the biggest beneficiaries.
Yeah, critics say your tariffs will end up being like a national sales tax.
Nope, the countries will pay.
If you have America at the moment has $3 trillion worth of imports, you're going to add tariffs to every single one of them. That is going to push up the cost for all those people who want to buy foreign goods.
No, what's going to happen?
Simple mathematics, President Trump.
It's not. Yeah, it is, but not the way you figure it. I was always very good at mathematics.
Trump was always very good at mathematics, and he knows that every single economist is wrong. The tariffs are going to be great for everybody. Now, at one point during this interview, Trump was distracted by a, quote, beautiful woman in the crowd and says to her that the migrants will look at her and then they would kill her.
These killers are among the most evil killers. They will look at you down, the beautiful woman there. They'll look at you and they will kill you. These are seriously sick people.
That specific beautiful woman in the audience, we don't know who she was. We're investigating. She will be killed by migrants if Kamala gets her way. Trump did interject one of these sir stories about Air Force One.
Every president comes in and talks about cutting wasteful spending.
Oh, there's tremendous waste.
Give me an example of something you will do that will get rid of government spending.
Well, let me give you an example. When I came into government, I was the first thing.
An example going forward.
Well,
not
no,
what
but
you did in the past.
this is going forward because it's the same thing. When I first sat down, a general came into my office and he said, "Sir, it's nice to meet you. Would you please sign this?" I said, "What is
Sir.
it?" It's a contract for a new Air Force One, which is actually two planes, not one, two Boeing 747. And I said, "How much is it?" $5.7 billion. So it's a hell of an expensive plane, but there's reasons for that. And he said, "Nope, I'm not signing it." I said, "Who negotiated?" "Barack Hussein Obama." I said, "I'm not signing it." Why? Because there's a lot of fat.
By the way, Trump essentially acknowledging that he opposed things simply because they were things that Barack Obama approved of. And finally, Donald Trump throwing a fit and attacking the moderator like a child because he's just furious at the fact that they're actually trying to hold him accountable and keep him on track, which is admittedly difficult to do.
She came out, she just said, the Green New Scam. She just named all these things.
President Trump, the issue the markets are looking at the fact you are making all these promises. Latest one was car loans. You're flooding the thing with giving giveaways.
But we're going to grow.
I was actually quite kind to you. I used 7 trillion. The upper estimate is 15 trillion. People like the Wall Street Journal, who's hardly a communist organization,
yeah, but you don't know.
They have criticized you on this as well. You are running up enormous debts.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about it.
You're trying to turn this. You're trying to turn this.
You've been wrong about it.
No, you're trying to turn this into debate.
And at this point, if you're watching, you see that Donald Trump has gone into his hissy fit toddler stage, where he crosses his arms and just attacks the interviewer. There is no more childish person with this much privilege that we have seen in public life that I can think of. And a humiliating interview. And if you look at the reviews, Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity and all of these different people, they are just enamored with this. They think this is the best thing that's ever happened. Trump went in there and schooled them and showed them who is boss. Humiliating. And I'm so sorry. There's no way to say this without sort of attacking almost half the country, almost half the voting public. The fact that this is a close election, when this level of incoherence and petulant childishness is happening every single time Trump is speaking publicly, it does not speak well about the country. I'll leave it at that. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time, and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. All right, today we've got something very interesting here. We're going to be speaking to 3 Republican voters against Donald Trump. We're going to be speaking with Robert Nix, Damian Solomon, and Kyle Sweetser. Kyle has been on the program before, so you may recognize him. Really appreciate the 3 of you joining me. You're all in different parts of the country. I'm curious whether you have different reasons for the decision you've made that you are not supporting Donald Trump this election. So, Robert, maybe we start with you. What attracted you to Trump originally, and what has turned you off from Trump?
Well, I was a Republican for 44 years, for 36 coming into 2016, and I wasn't attracted to him at all. I thought, oh, this is ridiculous. He's not going to get the nomination. There's this crowded field of Republicans. And then I was flabbergasted when he did. But as a Republican that long, I thought I had apprehensions, but I went ahead and thought, well, Hillary Clinton's the devil, and then I'll give this guy a try. And right away, I realized I'd made a mistake into it right as he took office. But yeah, I never really was into it. I just thought, well, I'm given a choice between a Democrat and Republican in 2016, and I went with the Republican, thinking, and I was apprehensive. I didn't ever like him. I thought, no way will he be the nominee, but he turned out to be, and I supported the ticket as a Republican.
So from the get-go, you were sort of a reluctant Trump supporter.
Oh, yes, I thought it would be ridiculous. I thought it would be absurd. And then I watched in horror as that field winnowed down little by little till it was just him. And I just thought, well, I support the ticket. I mean, I'm a Republican for this many years, for decades, and I'll give him a shot. And no, after that, once he took office, I realized I'd made a big mistake.
Was there anything in particular he did or said? Was it policy or was it style?
It was both his character, his lack of character, but also he began a pattern of undermining the Constitution by avoiding all accountability from whether he sort of made a mockery of the rule of law, of checks and balances. He started denigrating the free press so that it made it look like they were always lying and they were the enemy and fake news. And all of those are important parts of our Constitution. And then obviously after when he was running again in 2020, he lost. He did worse. He did a lot worse. He perpetrated the big lie, started an insurrection. And it's only gotten worse since. So yeah, my support for him ended right away in 2017.
Damian, how about you? Talk to me a little bit about your path in, if there was one, but then kind of what ultimately did it for you.
Well, I mean, this is back in 2016. I couldn't be more than opposite of Robert. I drank the Kool-Aid. I was into the self-funded election stuff, self-funded commercials, the whole 9 yards. I liked that. I liked the drain the swamp. I liked his rhetoric. I didn't mind the way he spoke because I was in the Army at the time and it didn't seem all that bad to me. So, I mean, whatever, we moved on with our lives. Through that time, I watched, from 2016 to 2020, I watched him be impeached twice. I watched him, I really thought the country was extremely divided under that time. And I just thought there was no reason to support this man anymore. He started not telling the truth and lying. But I was a big supporter at first until I learned more, essentially.
And Kyle, talk to us a little bit, especially for people who don't already know a bit of your story. What was it for you that ultimately did it?
Yeah, well, so originally I was all in on Trump. I voted for Trump in the primaries in 2016. I was a Trump supporter from day one. And over time, it was a bunch of things, but starting in 2018 with the tariffs, I didn't really understand how tariffs work. And many Trump supporters and probably most people in the GOP still don't know how tariffs work because of Trump's repeated lies, and the media that they consume doesn't do a good job fact checking that and really driving that the truth about tariffs in. Tariffs affected me directly with finished steel products in 2018. So I did start learning some things, and I started to look at Trump a little closer as time went on, and Trump's behavior to me became more apparent. I really held my nose in 2020 to vote for him. After that, January 6th, I thought there was absolutely no way this guy was going to run again. I think he even said he wasn't going to run again. It would be, you wouldn't see him again if he lost. And so I just thought there was going to be no way. But then when the Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, started paying attention to geopolitics, and I really started to pay attention to Trump's record, especially the things that he said, and his coddling of dictators, in rejection of American democracy and democracies around the globe.
I'm curious, different issues affect different voters differently. Now, when Donald Trump a couple months ago was interviewed by the National Association of Black Journalists, and he did this thing where he said, Kamala used to be black, but then she became Indian. Just to pick something, as Republican voters, historically Republican voters, does that sort of thing even matter to you guys? And maybe we'll go in the same order, Robert, Damien, and then Kyle. Or is that just sort of like, that's a style thing. I don't really care about that. It doesn't really figure into why he's not someone you would vote for. Just to pick an incident like that. Robert, did that do anything for you? Did you care about that?
Well, it wasn't that by itself. It was seeing this entire pattern of whether he's mocking the disabled, whether he's saying what he could do and can't do to women. And that was just one of a fire hose stream of all that we've seen. And so it wasn't one individual thing. It was just, this guy has no morals, no integrity, no character, and it's been on exhibition since he's taken office. And it's just so it's not one individual thing. It's just seeing it. By the time that term was done, I was like, there's no way I could ever support this guy again. I can't see how anybody else could. So it wasn't one thing. But so, yeah, that was important. But also to me, it's not even about issues. It's about our form of government is at stake. And so I believe that people are not realizing the danger we're in based on the fact that people are still focused on immigration or Israel or inflation or abortion. And all of those are just red herrings to let us think it's normal politics, that this is normal Republican versus Democrat. And that, I think, plays into their favor.
So in other words, it rubbed you the wrong way, but it wasn't like a major incident one way or the other. Damien, what about you? And it doesn't have to be just that one incident, but those sorts of incidents.
Well, David, that specific incident, just as a person, as an American, I thought was ridiculous. Like, it seems so outlandish to think someone couldn't have two or more nationalities in the country of immigrants. That just seems wild to me. And it's not the first time Trump has been outrageously disrespectful to someone or a group of people, or shown respect to a group of people that didn't deserve it. When he said the Presidential Medal of Freedom was more important than the Medal of Honor. That was ridiculous. Are you serious? Like 7% of our nation is veterans, and an extremely small percentage of them even get nominated for the Medal of Honor. To put those people in the same book as, Rush Limbaugh, I just found to be insulting on a personal level to me. I thought his presidency in 2016 did not have the decorum, did not have the professionalism that the president needed to present from the greatest nation in the world.
Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, so I thought it was disgusting. That's just un-American. Things like that, I don't really know how many things that he said like that over time, but it's a long pattern, and a lot of people like me weren't really plugged into the hyperactive political scene, and people kind of consume Fox News occasionally that are Trump supporters, and maybe not even every day. So that's just another instance that we can just point to and say that Trump's unfit to serve. He's un-American, and the parts of humanity or the voters that he's playing to with that language. It's just dangerous. He gives way too much oxygen to radicals and extremists, and just disturbing behavior.
I would just add, Dave, if I
Yeah, go
could,
ahead, Robert.
that even in today's news, there's stories of him saying that Latinos such as myself or blacks would be out of their mind not to support him. He said
Yeah.
that about Jews as well. It's just it's a kind of rhetoric that is. I'm reading that story and it's in disbelief. I mean, I'm Mexican American heritage from Texas originally, and just to see that or to read that today, I'm like, it's just unfathomable to me.
That's interesting. I'm Hispanic in that I'm from Argentina and I'm Jewish. And I've said, when I hear Trump say this, it doesn't make me think, man, maybe I should support the guy. Like it repels me. It sounds like you're saying the same thing.
Yes, yes.
Let me go in reverse order. So we'll start with Kyle this time, then go to Damien and back to Robert. Did you participate in the Republican primary? And who did you support? Who did you like of the Republicans that were running?
So in 2024?
In 2024.
Yeah, Nikki Haley. And I supported her very early on, the summer before, or I want to say of 2023. I supported Nikki Haley when she was at like 2% in the polls.
Okay. And then Damien, how about you?
Did not support the Republican Party this year. I found them to be appalling. I value honesty, and the amount of lies that I saw coming out of the Republican Party felt insulting personally as it's my value. It's something that's important to me as a core deep belief. And it's insulting to think somebody would be so blatant, lie, and spread all these things. It didn't matter which one. They all kind of supported Trump on the fake elector scheme and the 2020 election steal and all that good stuff.
So even like Chris Christie didn't appeal to you, even though he's been distant from Trump for a long time now.
So Chris Christie, he's done this before. He didn't have the support. If he'd have made it, I might have looked further into it, but he just looking at him, you just know he wasn't going to make it all the way.
Okay.
The moment I saw him, I knew he wasn't going to make it.
Yeah, I mean, the 1% polling throughout the campaign did not suggest that he had a real shot.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Robert, how about you?
Well, I voted in the Pennsylvania primary. It was April 23rd, I believe, and I voted for Nikki Haley, even though she was no longer on the ballot for 7 weeks then. She dropped out in March, and she wasn't on the ballot. It was like a protest vote, and 156,500 other Republicans in Pennsylvania did the same thing. And part of it was because she had not, even when she dropped out, had not endorsed Trump. And I thought if she had, then I would have written in Liz Cheney. But instead, I thought, well, look, maybe she is going to hold to the integrity of standing up for what she had been saying her campaign. And then sadly later in May and then at the convention, she did go ahead and endorse him. And but at that time I thought, well, she's standing up, and she's standing up for some remains of the Republican Party, that is not drank the MAGA Kool-Aid. And
as far as that endorsement, I'm curious, Robert, and then I want to ask Kyle also, because both of you said you were Haley supporters. Does her endorsement of Trump mean anything to you?
Well, no, it just makes me disappointed in her and realizes she's just part of the same problem, the same way anybody that's either endorsed or been endorsed by Trump in the Republican Party. For me, the only people that I see as actual real Republicans anymore are Liz Cheney or anybody that's willing, Adam Kinzinger, and anybody that's willing to renounce Trumpism and MAGA.
Kyle, what about you? Did you care? Were you moved in any way by her endorsement of Trump?
No, I mean, it's just one of those things. Kind of expected if she wants to stay in the GOP. Ultra disappointed, but it didn't affect me at all. Her. I don't think she had that pull with a lot of the voters. Maybe 50% or something, but a good chunk of Haley voters decided that they were never Trump, and her, moving to Trump isn't going to change that. It doesn't matter what they say, what she says. It's just not going to happen. I understand why she did what she did. Disappointing to me, though.
Thinking a little bit about 2028, I know some Republicans who are voting for Kamala Harris with the idea that we will sort of reinforce the guardrails that have been established in this country. It'll be a relatively uneventful 4 years with yet another Trump loss. Their hope is that in 2028, it'll set the Republican Party up to sort of demagify and go back to something, right? Whether it's more like John McCain, whether it's more like Mitt Romney, I don't know. It depends on who you ask. What's your thought about if indeed Kamala Harris wins? What do you want to see in 2028? And is there a Republican in politics today that's sort of like your dream candidate in that you really feel like they represent your values? Maybe we'll start with Robert.
Well, yeah, today, as I said it before, to me, I would describe myself as a Liz Cheney Republican at this point. She's the only one for me that has any integrity left. She and the few others that are like her, like Adam Kinzinger, I do respect them both, and I'd love to see them take the lead in a post-MAGA Republican Party. I think I agree with Kyle that that's why Nikki is as disappointed as I am in her endorsement of Trump. I think that's what she did to preserve her ability to still be viable in 2028 in a post-MAGA Republican Party. I'm not sure that I agree with you that it's going to be like that in 2028. I believe that there are elements that post-Trump that doesn't even matter, that are so awakened and so part of the party now, it's going to take longer than that. It's going to take the rest of the 20s to completely rid of not just MAGA, but the Christian nationalism undertone to it that is really dug in and really dug in. That's zealots that are not going to give up that easily and going to continue through the rest of the 20s, as far as I'm concerned. And that 2028 may be just as big of a battle with somebody else representing MAGA at that point.
Damien, what do you think? What would you like to see in 28? And if you could pick any Republican, who do you like right now?
Well, at this point, I'm not a big fan of the Republican Party. It seems that they've shown their cronyism more than ever, when it doesn't really matter what Trump says, that they all kind of just follow along. The cats and dogs are being eaten kind of thing. So when I went with that, I kind of completely lost the Republican Party. They don't seem attached to honesty. They only seem attached to this gangster-like mentality that it's one for all and all for one, and we have to make this work together. I would be more aligned to see a more constitutional Republican, something that is aligned with what I thought a Republican Party was, which was small government, low taxes, and government outside of my business. It doesn't matter what my religion is, what I do sexually or whatever. None of that matters. The government should just be over there making sure murderers don't hang out. So honestly, if I was to name a person in Congress that I particularly like, I would have to say Jamie Raskin, because every time I've heard him speak, he speaks very aligned with what the Constitution states. And I appreciate that.
Kyle, how about you?
Well, let's see what happens if Trump loses and see who tries to step into the vacuum. But unfortunately, people like JD Vance are becoming really popular with like ultra MAGA people, especially down here. They really like his whole little book thing and all that other stuff. Like you were talking about Christian nationalism, that's a big thing. So you're going to have these hyper extreme, ultra political people that are really, really putting in the work until they're, for who knows how long. So we'll see what happens. But right now, it just depends on what happens this year, and it depends on who tries to step in. I know there's a lot of DeSantis has a pretty big network online. So I'm not sure what that's going to turn into. I'm not a DeSantis supporter personally. I don't like his culture war stuff. I'm a limited government Republican. That's what I am. I'm not for the government expanding power over individual liberties. That's just not what I'm for. But we'll see what happens.
And is there anyone that you genuinely say, if this Republican became president, I would be very happy with that?
Right now, I'm not really sure, because as someone that supported Nikki Haley, I was really disappointed with her stance. So you really don't know what people are going to do. I'm just kind of playing it by ear right now.
When it comes to how you describe your political views, Robert, do you still describe yourself as conservative?
Yeah. I don't think I'm the one that's changed, and that in the party has been dramatically overtaken and changed. So that I mean, I was a Reagan Republican, and so to see what it's become now is like, we were for free trade, now we're for tariffs. We were for being leaders in the world and for world stability, and now we're about withdrawing from NATO and withdrawing from treaties. We were for the party of like family values, and then Trump has made a mockery of that in the world's eye. So yeah, I don't think I'm the one that's changed. I think I'm still the same, pretty maybe not ultra conservative. I'm more of a moderate Republican, and I have been the whole time. But I've been fiscally conservative the way Kyle was talking, and moderate on.
Damien, how about you? I mean, you talked a lot about small government and constitutionality. You still consider yourself a conservative?
I would, if I was to jump into politics today, I would consider myself a conservative Democrat, much like Tim Walz.
Okay. All right. And then Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, like Robert said, I don't think I've changed. The only thing I would say that has really changed in my mind, it's because of where I live in Alabama, is Roe versus Wade. It's not something I ever thought about. It's not something I would assumed would get overturned, personally. Never thought it would happen. So I view myself as a conservative in the sense that I thought that was the way things were going to be. You look at the state of Alabama and the numbers, Alabama's already abusing it. I think 50% of the charges related to removing Roe versus Wade are in Alabama, and we have 2.5 million women out of 168 million women. 50% of those are in the state of Alabama. Many of them, they don't even have evidence. It's on suspicion. I think a couple of them were on marijuana use, where they went in and said they took used marijuana at some point, and so they charge them for child endangerment because they had a miscarriage, even though there's not data to support charging someone on that for that. So.
Listen, gentlemen, extremely illuminating, 3 different paths, so to speak, out of Trumpism. We've been speaking with Robert Nix, Damian Salmon, and Kyle Sweetser. We're all going to be watching what happens in November, and I really appreciate your time and your insights today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the Daily Bonus Show, the commercial-free Daily Show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. Let's talk about Texas. Ted Cruz has a really serious Democratic challenger. His name is Colin Allred. He is he's an excellent candidate. I don't know how else to say it. Has the right policies, is good in a debate setting, seems like an all-around good guy. I mean, what more could you ask for? Well, a lot of Texas voters seem to be asking for more Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz does continue to lead most of the polls down in Texas, but it is close. And an internal memo from Senate Republicans points to Ted Cruz as potentially being in trouble, needing resources, needing to defend this seat. They had a debate last night, and I want to look at a couple of clips with you. Colin Allred was just really good, and pointing out that even though Ted Cruz calls himself pro-life, when you deny women care, you can't seriously expect us to believe that we're going to see you as pro-life. Take a listen to this.
I want to jump in here because I think it's too important.
We'll give you 60 seconds.
I want to be very clear to the people of Texas. I support the protections and the restrictions under Roe. But Senator Cruz just called himself pro-life. You're not. You're not pro-life. It's not pro-life to deny women care so long that they can't have children anymore. It's not pro-life to force a victim of rape to carry their rapist's baby. It's not pro-life that our maternal mortality rate has skyrocketed up by 56%. That's not pro-life, Senator. So to every Texas woman at home and every Texas family watching this, understand that when Ted Cruz says he's pro-life, he doesn't mean yours.
This was brutal. Ted Cruz, if you're watching, you see him start to shake his head there. Allred knocked the smirk off of Cruz's face at one point when he kind of made fun of Ted Cruz not being an athletic guy, not being good at sports. You know, this is kind of below the belt, but at the same time, in the context of our discussion that we've been having and will continue to have actually on tomorrow's program about the MAGA image of masculinity, we've talked before, and we're going to have a deeper discussion about it tomorrow, about how, on the one hand, the MAGA movement and these kind of reactionary Republicans like Ted Cruz and others, they want to portray an image of masculinity and the alpha male image that they claim to adhere to, while they really don't. And there's really no way to talk about this other than to kind of say things that are a little bit mean. Ted Cruz is kind of a doofus, and he's got this high-pitched, whiny voice. His physical appearance is not exactly attractive. He's not in shape, and he is the opposite. He's the guy that the people that they want you to believe they are would have been making fun of in high school. And I'm against that, by the way. I'm against bullying. I'm against all of it, okay? But to understand this contrast, you have to understand that they are what they claim to despise. And Colin Allred quite literally just removes the smirk from Cruz's face when Cruz hears what Allred says.
You have 60 seconds.
I mean, you know, it's a lot. And I stand here as a proxy for millions of Texans who are sick and tired of this act. You know, when Ted Cruz starts talking about team sports, you got to watch out, because the only position he ever played was left out. And I'm not trying to be mean, Senator, but just sit this one out, please. Listen,
And Cruz not liking that. And by the way, having no serious retort. So where does this race stand right now? You know, I want to be realistic, and I'm realistic when it comes to Harris-Trump, and I think the most likely scenario is still one where Kamala Harris ultimately edges this out, even though Donald Trump has a serious chance to become president. When we look at Texas, there are people saying, oh, Harris could carry Texas. I don't see that. I don't see that happening. We still want to make them defend Texas, but I don't see Kamala Harris winning Texas. Let me put it this way. If Kamala Harris wins Texas, she's going to win everything. We're not going to have to worry about Texas if she wins it. It's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy in that way. There are people saying Ted Cruz genuinely might lose. Yes, Ted Cruz might lose. But if you look at the polling, the serious polling, you see Cruz +4, Cruz +5, Cruz +3, +3, +3 in a number of different polls. This is a small margin for a Republican, an incumbent Republican in Texas. Don't get me wrong. This is the worst that it has looked for Cruz at this later stage of a campaign since he first ran. I do think it is almost certain that unless these numbers significantly change in the next couple weeks, Ted Cruz gets reelected. But we're going to make him fight for it. And the fact that Republicans are worried means that they know that they need to put resources into this one if they want to be sure that they are going to be able to win it. So great job by Colin Allred. The great thing about Colin Allred is you don't have to kind of, say, I'm going to look the other way and vote for the Democrat, even though the Democrat sucks. With Colin Allred, you can say, it's not just that Ted Cruz is terrible. Colin Allred is an excellent candidate, and I'm going to vote for him. So if you live in Texas, make sure that you do vote. Arizona is not a place that you want to mess up the word Arizonans. And apparently, due to a serious teleprompter failure, Donald Trump referred to Arizonans as Azerasians, once again proving that despite all the talk about not needing a teleprompter, Trump loves to say Biden needs a prompter, Kamala needs a prompter, Obama needed a prompter. It's Trump whose speech collapses whenever the prompter doesn't work right. And I'll be honest, I don't even believe the prompter wasn't working right. I think Trump saw the word Arizonans, didn't recognize it, and came up with this.
Thank you, Tanya. Oh, beautiful. You look great. Thank you, darling. Also, we have many Azerasians in our room. We have some incredible people in our room. We have so many that we just can't, but we have...
Yeah. We have Azerasians in the room. Sir, are the Azerbaijans in the room with you right now? And Trump says, yes, they are. When I first heard this clip, I wrongly thought that Trump was trying to say Assyrians and failing. But no, it's actually it's actually an even more common word to Trump than that. It's Arizonans. Trump did, during this speech in Arizona, or in Azuria, he did mix in a little bit of hatred of black migrants to go with the brown migrants as well, saying that there are people coming out of the Congo, which Trump recently said he's never heard of. What's the Congo? And these are some of the absolute worst people that could be coming here.
These are lovely people. They don't commit crimes. No, these are among the worst criminals anywhere in the world, and they come from all over. A huge number is coming out of jails in the Congo, because what's happening is countries and continents, but countries are releasing their prison populations into our country. And you know what? If I headed up any one of the countries we're talking about, I would have done the same thing. I would have done it even faster, because who the hell can blame them? Who can blame them? In Venezuela, their crime is down 72% because they've taken the street criminals, they've taken the drug dealers and the drug lords, they've taken all of these people and they've busted them into the United States, and their crime is down now 72%, and it'll go still further because they haven't gotten them all out.
Remember that Trump is just taking the word of the Venezuelan regime as to how much their crime has declined, which is very convenient because Trump normally says you can't trust a word they say.
But they're coming, and they've taken their prisons, and their prisons are way down, lowest number they've had in many, many decades, because they've moved all of their prisoners, and these are hardened people. They know better than anybody who they are.
Yeah. Remember that undocumented immigrants commit crimes at lower rates than both legal immigrants and native-born Americans in the United States. All available crime data proves this. Trump started talking about the smartest person ever, and someone in the crowd yells, "It's Trump."
You know who the smartest person they say in history was? Albert Einstein. He said Trump. I agree with him. He said Trump.
Albert Einstein. She said Trump. I agree with him. So a little egomaniacal narcissism to round out the rally. And then finally, Trump admits when it comes to polling, if it says that he's winning, it's a good poll. If it says that he's losing, it cannot be trusted.
And I think the polls are wrong about a lot of things, although I don't want to say that now because we're leading, so let's leave them. They're only wrong when they give me a bad one.
Right.
But we are doing great in the polls. We've done really great in the polls.
So Trump admitting that he's always going to tell you, poll says I'm winning, it's a good poll. Poll says I'm losing, it's a bad poll. Insulting the Azerbaijans of Arizona to no end. People heading for the exits at Trump as Trump speaks. But this guy genuinely could be the next president. Now, on the bonus show today, we're going to talk about a bit of good news. A Georgia judge has blocked that wacky ballot counting rule, which would have allowed county officials to say, nah, I don't think these results are valid. I'm going to reject them. A judge has blocked that rule. That's a major loss for MAGA and a major win for democracy. Secondly, that Mark Robinson guy who got caught, with all the porn and the black Nazi stuff and the whole thing. He is now suing both CNN and the employee of a porn store. It's insane. And then finally, on the bonus show, North Korea says that the country's citizens are eager to join the army. 1.4 million, they say, just volunteered to join the army to fight South Korea if necessary. I'm sure under no duress whatsoever. All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. Make sure you're subscribed on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/The David Pakman Show. Please pre-order my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, at davidpakman.com/echo. And of course, remember that the bonus show is every day, and I would love for you to hear it. I would love for you to see it. You can sign up at joinpakman.com. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. If you ever have sleep issues, melatonin can be a great way to go. Melatonin is clinically proven to help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer. My favorite way to take it is before bed with a nice warm mug of Dream Hot Cocoa with melatonin from our sponsor Beam, naturally sweetened with monk fruit, only 15 calories in a ton of delicious flavors. Every serving has 1 dose of melatonin to help you fall asleep fast and sleep the entire night. Go to shopbeam.com/David and use code David for up to 40% off. The link is in the description.